Tennessee WildCast is live on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. We're glad you're tuning in, and we are live on Facebook right now, and thank you all for watching there. We're pretty excited about today's show. We've got some information that you're going to look forward to having, I think. Some of you may be excited about it. Some of you may not be, and that's okay. But Tennessee is offering a velvet deer hunt. Antlered deer, still in velvet, are going to be able to be chased on August 24th, 25th, 26th. So we're going to get into all those details today. And but first, we want to introduce our guests, and I'll pan back out. You've seen him when we started the show, but Mr. Dale Grandstaff there on the end. He is our District 21 captain, and Mr. Eric Anderson, Sumner County officer. Thank you guys for being here.
Glad to be here.
Eric, are you here?
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. I'll just give you a hard time. You guys are out in the field every day, working the wildlife, and we appreciate the work you all do, but and appreciate y'all being here. And we're going to talk about the velvet hunt and opportunities around it, and maybe a little bit of biology about why they have velvet and the life of a deer. So anyway, first, let's hit the details on the what's legal and what's not, what days and all that kind of stuff. So Dale, let's push it over to you if you don't mind. Give us the details around the 3-day hunt.
Well, this hunt was placed at the end of August, which should allow everybody, and those dates are the 24th, 25th, and 26th of August. And those dates were kind of chosen in order to allow people to harvest one that should still have velvet on its antlers. They're going to start dropping some velvet. You may even see a deer out of velvet on this hunt, and that deer is legal to harvest. So just keep that in mind. Just because it doesn't have velvet doesn't mean you can't take it. So it was placed at the end of August to allow people to harvest one with velvet. Most of them will still have velvet on, but going into the following week and the week after, they're going to start dropping it. Their racks are going to be pretty solid at the end of August. Right now they're already solid, and you just need to be careful if you shoot one in handling it as far as dragging it or do anything with it. I would figure out a way to get it out of the woods without touching the velvet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're going to be it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be the normal hard bone antler that you're used to dragging out of the woods, and even the cape is going to be thinner. It's going to be a totally different experience. I've got a video that I want to show, and I'm going to do that right now. This is Mr. Chris Butt. He's a taxidermist here local, and he's helped us out quite a bit with some videos and some information, and he's going to show us today, or tell us his side of things from a taxidermist standpoint, and then we'll come back.
And that's important. Just make sure you contact your taxidermist maybe prior to going on this hunt.
Right.
And they'll give you some pointers on what you need to do before you bring it into them.
Okay. Well, let's cut to this, and then we'll come back. And we're back. Looks like we got a glitch on the video. So we're not going to show that today. Sorry about that. So anyway, his what he was going to tell us about was some of the stuff you'd already mentioned, but not to drag it by a certain part of the antler, not to hold it by this part or that part, and that it's the fur is going to be tender and could flake off, could pull off.
If whatever you can do, avoid touching the antlers.
Right.
That the velvet will it'll rub, it'll break, it'll come off if you put a lot of pressure on it. So figure out a way to get it out of the woods without pulling it.
And it's going to be really hot, right?
It's going to be hot.
So what's the key to that? Getting it cooled down quick, right?
Yeah, Eric, you probably have you talked to some of your taxidermists already about
a few
what
of
they
them.
need to do?
Yeah, and they're getting ready, and I think information like we're talking about today is key to get hunters ready. And the preparation not only starts with thinking about the transporting of the deer, but it goes all the way back to practicing your archery skills. Because if you make that poor shot in August, it's not going to be as forgiving as it is in September because of the reasons we're talking about, and including the spoilage of the meat.
Mm-hmm.
So making that key shot to retrieve that animal quick is of paramount importance. But also, like Dale said, maybe go ahead and call your taxidermist. Let he or she know you're going to be bringing an animal in, hopefully, and see if they're going to be open later, have later business hours. Can you swing it by that evening if you recover it later into the nighttime? Can you go ahead and take it after hours? Do they have something set up for that? If not, I know in Gallatin at Poindexter's they have a walk-in cooler, and they allow hunters to come after business hours and drop their animals out in that, drop them off and put them in that cooler. So whatever arrangements you need to make, all that prep work needs to be done well before you get into the stand. But like I said, it starts with practicing. Get on the range and start taking those shots and practice while it's hot. It sounds kind of funny, but you can relate it to sports. If you practice like you play. So I would encourage people to make yourself a little uncomfortable as far as the heat and get used to that environment. There's going to be bugs, but anyway, just whatever you need to do to make yourself comfortable with your shot, know your limits, and practice because the heat is pretty unforgiving after the animal goes out there.
And speaking of heat and the bugs and all that, ticks are still going to be out, and they're going to be. You mentioned earlier, we were just talking off camera, but the deer are going to be covered in ticks more than likely.
And that's one thing I was going to make a point of. This hunt is not for everyone. Some people are excited about it, and some people are not going to go on this hunt at all. They're going to be covered in ticks. It's going to be hot. There's going to be mosquitoes. It's going to be a rough hunt. It's not going to be an easy go out and shoot a velvet buck.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that are excited about it, prepare for the bugs, mosquitoes, the ticks, and get ready for that. And as soon as you kill this deer, you are going to start seeing the ticks crawl. So they're going to try to come off of it. And one point that Eric made as far as taking these deer and putting them in a cooler, that's another step that you need to think about. If I shot a really nice buck and it had velvet, I would go get a pillow from the dollar store or some cheap cloth, and if I'm going to drag it into a cooler, I'd lay its head on it. Soft cushion.
Yeah.
If you're going to hang it up, don't let the antlers touch the floor because it'll damage the velvet.
That's one thing that Chris was going he was going to tell us about in that video that didn't play. He was going to tell us that especially the handling part of it, but get it cooled down as quick as you can, and to cape it out as quickly as you can. If you can cape it out and cut it off below the neck and get it to him, or get it in the freezer in a bag as quickly as possible, that's the best route.
Yeah.
So the faster you can get it out of the woods and caped out and cooled down, the better off you're going to be.
Absolutely.
I was showing a few pictures on the screen here. That's a nice velvet deer and trail cam shot that Barry Cross shared with us, and Eric had sent in a few. I'm going to show those to the folks at home. Tell us about some of these deer, Eric.
Well, these deer are photographs I've taken over the past couple weeks in and around Sumner County. Two reasons I wanted to share those with you and with everybody watching is, number one, to get an idea of what the velvet antlers are looking like this time of year and they may change a little bit, tighten up just a little bit before the hunt, but also the age class of deer that we have in and around the state. These deer are pretty unique in that they're in areas that are not heavily hunted, so they're allowed to get older. It's a learning tool to show if and when they're allowed to grow that they can. We're growing trophy deer. There's no doubt about it. They just need time. So
that's a pretty cool deer there with the drop tines.
Yeah. He has a history. I was sharing with you that story earlier. He had been attempted to be shot before season a couple years ago. As a result of that injury, he grew those double drop tines, and he eventually was harvested legally with archery equipment last year. So he was a really cool deer. He was probably 4.5 years old when he was harvested. So.
And this is his cousin, right?
Yeah. He that's an interesting rack, and the gentleman that put me onto that deer that told me where he was at, where we could go photograph it, has nicknamed that deer Kramer.
Okay.
So you can put those pieces together, you can see why. But again, he's a very old deer. If you could see the whole body, I don't have that picture here, but there's lots of traits that you can easily see his age. But again, just age structure. If you just pass them, which what kind of ties into this the velvet hunt. antlers are going to look a little bit different. They're going to present a little more mass when you see them. So I would encourage hunters that do practice management, that are passing whatever age structure is appropriate for them, because a trophy to one is not a trophy to another.
Right.
But I would encourage folks not to get too excited to go away from their own habits, their own standards, I guess you would say. In other words, a 2.5-year-old in velvet is going to look more impressive than a 2.5-year-old out of velvet. And just kind of stick to your guns, so to speak. And if you're practicing those management practices to pass younger deer, I wouldn't take one just because he is in velvet. You know, don't let that be the novelty that kind of gets out of there, because I do feel like we're going to have a lot of younger deer harvested. And like I said a minute ago, my trophy's probably different than your trophy, so I'm not telling anybody what to shoot, but definitely just stick to your practice, your management practices, and study the traits of the animal other than the antlers to determine the age structure, and then make your decision based on that.
Awesome.
And to follow up on that, these bucks on this antlered hunt in August, or velvet hunt in August, they're going to count towards your statewide bag limit.
Okay.
So you can take both of your bucks during this early season we have. So you could take one on Friday, one on Saturday, and you're finished for the season. So keep that in mind. Like Eric said, don't let the lure of a velvet rack kind of keep you from being able to hunt the rest of the season.
That's good information, and I want to recap all that right before we close out the show, just to make sure everybody knows, step by step what they can and can't do. You brought in an antlered, or a velvet antlered deer here that was a roadkill, I guess.
This is a roadkill, and the reason I brought this in is to give everybody an idea. This deer was run over the first week of August a couple of years ago. And you can see on, I think, this side, this deer's right outside edge of the beam is what hit the pavement. And early August, they're already solid. So if this had been in July, early July, it would have probably broke it up, and it would have looked a lot different. But it's already solid. I got to the deer within 2 hours probably, and so loaded it up. It was in the back of my truck for probably a couple of hours until I got to the taxidermist. So about 4 hours in August, and you can see it turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
Got it to the taxidermist, and they worked on it. But early August, they're already pretty solid. And when you shoot one in late August, there's not going to be any droop. There's not going to be any worry with this thing not being solid inside. And that's kind of the one thing I wanted to show people is already in early August, they're already solid. They just still have velvet on them.
And like you said, they could possibly be some of it rubbed off, and maybe all of it rubbed off. So those are still legal animals to take. But.
And you could see a bloody, racked deer come walking through the woods and wonder what is going on. But once this process starts, this velvet coming off, it only takes a few hours for it to all come off.
Okay.
So it could be a process of a couple of hours, or it could be a 2-day ordeal for them trying to get it all off. But most of the time, it's going to come off pretty quick and be hanging around their face, and they're going to be eating it and chewing it and trying to get it off. So if you see something coming through the woods that's got a bloody-looking rack and a lot of stuff around its face, it's probably coming off.
And that's good information that I don't think we've mentioned. There's actually blood running through those antlers, and they're really soft, before they harden up and lose that velvet. You can't. Stuff wouldn't be able to grow. The velvet wouldn't be able to grow, right? If the blood wasn't there, and
correct.
That's how it all works. It's pretty cool to see some thermal imaging video of these deer in the summertime.
They glow like crazy, and they stick out. You can see them. They'll be laying in a bean field, think they're hid because their body and eyesight is below the beans, but their racks are sticking up and just like glowing out there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wanted to hit on the life cycle of a buck. About at what age do they start growing antlers, and then once they do, what's the year cycle of that, and do they drop them, or do they, some people don't know that they drop the antlers and they grow them back and they get bigger and bigger every year, or they'll grow back similar to the same size. And can you just go over that a little bit? And Eric and Dale, you can pass it back and forth there, but
I'll just go over a little bit and jump in with the what you've seen, like with the buck that had the drops, how they can change. But basically, the at 6 months old, they may have buttons sticking out. They may not have buttons sticking out. And a button is just a little piece of hard antler that's broken the skin,
right.
and that will be their first so-called rack. in the springtime, usually around anywhere from January, February, March, they'll drop anything they've got on their head that's hard bone. And around April, May, they start growing their rack back. And at a year and a half, they'll have some kind of a visible rack sticking up through the summer into August. Usually that first year it's going to be a smaller rack. Second year it's going to be a little bit bigger. Third year a little bigger, usually, unless they're damaged or something's wrong. And then my thought is in this area at 4.5 and 5.5, they're going to exhibit pretty much what their rack will always be. It may change back and forth a little bit, but 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, as long as they've got that age, they're going to grow usually a decent rack, unless there's some limiting factor. And then they will shed the velvet off usually late August, early September, but for sure it's usually gone by mid-September when we have our regular opener of archery season, which is September 22nd this year. Yep. So that by the time we have our normal fourth Saturday in September opener, it's always normally off. They'll go into the rut. They'll polish their antlers up. They'll go into the rut in late October, usually in this area, and start hitting it pretty hard early November.
During the muzzleloader
season. During the muzzleloader season, they're going good, and even through Thanksgiving, pretty good. In different parts of states, it's different, but around this Nashville area. And then they'll go into December if they haven't had a hard rut. They'll go into December, maybe hit a second rut there. And in January, February, March, you can expect them as the daylight starts to increase, longer days after December 21st starts to increase, their testosterone levels go down in their body, and it triggers their antlers to fall off.
Okay.
And when they fall off, they'll start regrowing again April, May.
Awesome. That's pretty crazy that can happen all in 1 year.
And they can change, and that's what I was saying, mention that deer that you kind of have a history
the drop
with.
Time. Yeah. He was just a real pretty mainframe 8-pointer with crab claws for 2 years that we took photographs of him. And then when he was shot before season with archery, he survived that shot, but when he came back to his home range or his home area where we always saw the deer, that following summer, he had kept the same structure of the rack, but the drop tines showed up. Pretty much as a result of the injury.
Okay, you think that's
it altered that growth. There's another really young deer that I noticed the other day who has a tumor on his back right leg, but his left antler is, and that right side is completely normal. I think he would be an 8-pointer, but his left antler has grown straight up and then just kind of does some weird stuff because that injury on the right side affects the antler on the left side, and vice versa. So the injuries and nourishment will also have a big impact on that also.
Right. That reminded me, I get questions all the time on Facebook. I've got this injured deer, or this deer has a tumor, or this deer has these spots or these warts or something. We don't go out and try to fix that or help that deer mainly. We let nature take its course, right?
Let nature take its course. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have one rehabilitator that's permitted in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, that's in Middle Tennessee, and they're located here in Nashville. They're constantly taking in animals. They'll never say no unless they physically don't have the room for them. And with deer, the volume of calls that we receive, obviously the healthy population we have, it would be impossible to try to take care of every single injury that we come across. So when I receive those calls in my county, I always ask a few key questions to make sure it's a humane decision to allow the animal to live, because ultimately we would want to put that animal down. We want to do the right thing. But if the animal is able to get around, it's able to get away from predators or avoid danger, if it's able to get around and feed itself and graze, then let's just let nature take its course. I've seen at least 2 different does that have been hit by cars, lost a leg, and by the next year they were healthy and back to having offspring. And they've lost a leg and they're hopping around, but they're moving on. They're doing fine. So we try to give them a fighting chance.
They can adapt very, very easily. I was looking at Facebook the other day, and there was this bear walking around on 2 legs, and they said it had been hit by a car, so the front legs didn't work. So it had learned to walk on its hind legs. So it looked like a person walking around in the streets. I mean, it was in a neighborhood. But
they're
anyway,
resilient.
Yeah, they can.
Most of the time, a deer, if you see one come through the woods and he's got a really messed up, gnarly rack that grew that way, it wasn't busted up from maybe getting hit by a car, but it grew that way, he's going to have some kind of damage to his body, it's not going to be a genetic thing. It's going to be damage to his body that created that gnarly, crazy-looking rack, other than the cluster bucks. But it's a little different. You just have to look at them, and you can tell they're different.
Well, talk about the cluster bucks. Since you mentioned that, we've had quite a few killed here in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee a lot, and we've had a pretty cool display. I don't know if you've been able to see that on Facebook earlier in the year, but Stephen Tucker has taken what is pending world record. So
it should. I think they're going to have their meeting in the fall this year of 2019 instead of the spring of 19. So I think that meeting is going to be in the fall. But those deer, I expect another one to be killed this year or next year, no doubt, because there's some out there. We've seen some. So the deer are around. There's more out there. It's just a matter of someone getting one.
Yeah, it's neat to see.
What's your opinion on that, Eric? What do you think? Somebody's going to probably get one this year, next year? I believe they will.
I'm not saying it will be as big as Stevens, but yes, I think there will be a number of good ones.
Yeah, it sounds like you got your eye on one.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. There is a deer in Sumner County, and it's not. Let's say it's less than 5 miles from where Stephen got his big buck. And this deer last year, we first got eyes on him. He was, I would estimate, 1.5 years, 2.5 at the most. Very young deer. And got some good pictures of him. He had 24 points, and just a young deer. And watched him all through the winter. Watched him early spring before he shed those antlers. And I looked for those antlers, couldn't find them. And I'm looking for him right now. I'm very eager to see what he looks like as a 3-year-old or if he's a 2-year-old. But he has those traits, that cluster trait. I want to see, A, did he carry it over to this next year, and then B, how big is he? And as soon as I saw the deer, it had a lot of the if you zoomed in on pictures side by side, some very, very specific things about his rack that was very similar to Stevens. If you broke down the antlers into, this webbing here and this happened, these things, very similar.
They were very similar.
Very similar.
Wow.
So I think they're cousins at the least. But I wish I could have had a picture of him to show you right now of him this year. I'm still looking for him.
Yeah.
But he's out there.
It's we were I had a chance to go by the Wonders of Wildlife Museum there in Springfield a couple weeks ago, and the deer in that museum, the size, the clusters, and then just the mass, and you think, how does Stevens Tucker's deer beat out those? But it's just the craziness of
It is.
It's tine length.
Yeah.
Tine length gives that deer its score. There's a lot of points, but each point is long. It's not a little 1-inch or 2-inch point. They're all 3, 4, 5 inches long. That's what gives it the high score.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. You mentioned this before the show, and we wanted to make sure we hit on that. But to make sure you look at the guide, and that the 24th, 25th, and 26th is a special season, and you wanted to hit on that to make sure people understand what they can and can't do. And I want to make sure it's clear before we close out today. So
Eric and I will go down and just break it down. It's page 32 of the hunting guide, and it's the deer hunting, big game hunting, but for deer. And the first one you're going to see is the young sportsman, gun muzzler archery. That's in October. But the one things that we really want to point out today was the archery private lands only, August 24th, 25th, and 26th. And private lands only means if you have access to someone's farm, that's private land. If you own land, that's private land. It's not our wildlife management areas. It's not places like Cross Creeks. It's not TVA land. It's not core land. It's privately owned land only. That's important for people to know. It's still a 2-buck limit. So if you take, and it's 1 per day, 1 buck per day. So if you take one on Friday, you still have 1 left for the entire hunting season this year. So keep that in mind.
It's not a bonus buck.
It's not a bonus buck. So definitely, if you take both of your bucks on this hunt, you're finished. You can still doe hunt, or maybe if you're drawing for a special bonus hunt, then you can go on that. But otherwise, you're finished buck hunting for the season. So just keep that in mind. That Saturday is free hunting day in the state, so no license required for residents of the state. And I'm sure there will be a few people who will take advantage of that. But most people that are going to go on this hunt, I'm going to guess, are going to have
license.
Yeah,
and
most of them.
To participate on free hunting day, you must be hunter head certified or have the apprentice license, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then we'll just go on down. The regular archery season starts on September 22nd.
Yeah, hit on that, Eric. Yeah.
Runs September 22nd through October 26th. In Unit L, which is where we're sitting today, 3 antlerless deer can be taken per day. the same statewide bag limit applies for $2 per year, one per day, and go into your respective unit, which is designated there on the right, to see what your antlerless harvest would be.
Those vary throughout the state, yeah.
Correct, yeah. So I'm not going to touch on each one of those individually, but just reference this chart. And
then that rut period when the bucks start moving a little bit more and have a chance at a bigger deer is November 3rd, muzzleloader season.
That's right, man. That's a magical time.
Yeah.
And we see this every year. Definitely remember that October 29th through November the 2nd is archery only. A lot of people will think archery ends on October the 26th. We have the youth hunt on October 27th, 28th, and the next day it's muzzleloader. It's not.
It goes back to archery.
It goes back to archery. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of people that shoot some good deer with a muzzleloader that week that they lose that deer because it's archery only.
And then following that muzzleloader season on the 16th of November, the next day, 17th of November, opens up gun, and you can hunt gun, muzzleloader, archery, anything during this time period through the January 6th. 3 does a day in unit L, and the doe or antlerless bag limit varies from there on out. But remember, your $2 limit, it still applies. And then
look
there's
at
a
that
special
state.
hunt.
Look at the state up above on this page. If you don't know where you're going, but you know the county you're in, just find the county, and you'll know what unit you're going to be hunting in.
Right, makes it real easy. And then that last week, there's a special unit L hunt. Hit on that, Eric. That's in your area.
Yep, that's going to be a private lands only, antlerless only in unit L. So similar to our archery hunt, it's private only, no WMAs, antlerless only. You know, it's a good chance to fill the freezer up late season. It's good and cold. So this will be our 3rd year, I believe, for that hunt.
Yeah.
I think that's been well received, and folks like that extra week to put a few does in the freezer.
Yep.
So, well, I appreciate you guys being with us today, and hopefully that clarifies the velvet season, the velvet hunt, and also highlights the rest of the year. And thank you guys for what you do and keeping us safe out in the outdoors. And
always enjoy being here.
Appreciate you having us, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the Velvet edition of Tennessee WildCast, and we thank y'all for being here. Join us next week. It will be here same time, same place. And remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Visit our website, tnwildlife.org. That's where you can get up to date and find all the information you need. So,
and albinos, always illegal to take.
There you go. You heard it. Albino's illegal. All right. We'll see y'all next time on Tennessee WildCast.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.